Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the IndieZone. My name is Kathy. As you know, we have been waiting for the unsealed responses and objections that the state of Idaho filed on the 6th of December. They did turn up finally today on the docket, and today is the 12th. So it's been just about a week since the state filed its various objections to the defense's motions to compel discovery, motions to suppress evidence. And I want to go over one with you. I find it rather interesting. It provides a little bit of insight into Mr. Kohberger's pending request for a Franks versus Delaware hearing. And we've done a prior episode on the IndieZone here on YouTube, as well as the IndieZone podcast of what a Franks hearing is. The item that I wanted to address with you here today is state's objection to defendant's motion to suppress and memorandum in support regarding arrest warrant. So this has to do with Mr. Kohberger's arrest back on December 30th, 2022. By way of background, Mr. Kohberger was in Pennsylvania at the time, although he was during the fall semester of 2022 residing in Washington, attending Washington State University, and also working as a PhD teaching assistant at Washington State University. At the time, he was across the country in Pennsylvania on the day of his arrest at his parents' home in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. So this motion begins by saying that the state of Idaho, by and through the Latah County prosecuting attorney, respectfully submits the following objection to the defendant's motion to suppress and memorandum in support regarding arrest warrant. Next paragraph. As an initial observation, the defendant's instant motion, that means the motion that the state is hereby responding and objecting to, that's what the instant motion means, is unclear as to what, quote, arrest warrant, unquote, he is referring to. The defendant's arguments in his instant motion up here, and we go on to page 2 to continue reading what the state is saying here. It appear to substantively be identical to the arguments the defendant propounds in his motions to suppress, quote, Pennsylvania search warrant for Lambsden Drive in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and statements made, quote, for Mr. Kohberger's person and, quote, for white Hyundai Elantra bearing, and then it gives you the VIN number. These motions all address search warrants, plural, issued and served in the state of Pennsylvania. The state is unaware of any Pennsylvania arrest warrant that would be subject to the same analysis. And adding to this confusion is the fact that the title/captions defendant uses in the text of the instant motion and all appear to refer to, quote, search warrant as opposed to arrest warrants. See section 8, page 4, section 3, page 6. The only mention of an arrest warrant is the defendant's conclusion on page 7. And if you would like to review the defense's motion that's being referred to here, actually it's motions, please go to the IndieZone podcast. We have done a synopsis of all of these documents and provided you with a link where they are available on the docket so that you can read them for yourself. So what the state here is charging is that there's confusion. It's unclear. They do not know. They're guessing at which warrant Mr. Kohberger is directing his originating motion to. Nonetheless, they say here, to the extent the defendant is referring to his arrest in Pennsylvania, and to avoid unnecessary repetition, the state incorporates herein the state's objection to defendant's motion to suppress and memorandum in support regarding Pennsylvania search warrant for the Lambsden Drive property in Albrightsville, and statements made, which itself further incorporates the state's response to the defendant's Frank's motion and motion to suppress regarding genetic information. So here we get a little bit of a clue of what Mr. Kohberger's sealed request for a Frank's hearing and supporting memorandum and documents that were filed in support of that request for a Franks versus Delaware hearing. We see that in paragraph 2, if you go to page 2, paragraph 2, there's a little bit of insight of what appears to be in that sealed motion. The last paragraph, page 2, regarding the defendant's suppressed facts, represented facts, the state respectfully refers the court to defendant's exhibits A and B, filed in support of his motion to suppress regarding the Lambsden Drive, Albrightsville, Pennsylvania property, and statements made, as opposed to relying on the defendant's subjective, not objective, this is subjective they're charging, summary and interpretation that begins page 2 of the instant motion. The state further incorporates its exhibits S1 through S6 to its objection to defendant's motion to suppress the Lambsden Drive search warrant. That ends page 2. The beginning of page 3 is entitled Applicable Law. They have to cite to some type of legal authority in support of their position that Mr. Kohberger's motion, which is an application for a court order, should be denied. This is what the state is requesting here. Under the section Applicable Law, in response to the defendant's discussion starting at page 3 regarding applicable law, the state respectfully refers the court to its written response beginning at page 2 of the state's objection to the defendant's motion regarding the Lambsden Drive property and incorporates the same herein. We're going to go over that motion in the next episode of the IndieZone here on YouTube to address what that motion specifically says and what the defense, what the state here is objecting to. And this again is regarding the warrant for the search at the Lambsden Drive property. Again, that's in Pennsylvania. That's where Mr. Kohberger was at the time of his arrest, December 30th, 2022. What Mr. Kohberger was arguing is that there was a conflict of law. Which law applies? Does the law of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania apply, or does the law of the state of Idaho apply? Because what happened first, if you look on the docket, on the 29th of December 2022, a few things happened. First, the Affidavit of Probable Cause, signed by Detective Brett Payne, was filed. That document was then utilized in support of the criminal complaint that Bill Thompson, the Latah County prosecutor, filed asking for Mr. Kohberger's arrest for 5 crimes. It was the all felonies, felony burglary, and then the 4 counts against the children who were horribly and viciously unalived that day. 5 counts, depending on the Affidavit of Probable Cause. That was submitted that day to Judge Megan E. Marshall on the 29th of December, 2022. Judge Marshall issued an arrest warrant for Mr. Kohberger, and secondly, the order finding probable cause based on the Affidavit of Probable Cause, and also setting the bail at no bail. That then led the Moscow Police Department, working in collaboration with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to ask the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to have a warrant issued for Mr. Kohberger's arrest, and there were several other things that were asked for in a document. It looks like the Affidavit of Probable Cause. It was signed by Detective Payne, but it went into a lot more detail. We previously went over that document in an episode of the IndieZone podcast, which you can find on Spotify, on Apple, on Amazon, on Listen Notes, and several other platforms. The rest of the document talks about more law and states that it is the defendant's burden to prove that the warrant was illegal. They say here that they believe Mr. Kohberger failed to meet his evidentiary, his burden of proof. They find here, and they argue, the state does, that the warrant was issued properly, it should not be suppressed, and that ultimately, at the end of this document, what the state is asking the judge to do is to deny this motion to suppress. Mr. Kohberger now has an opportunity to file a reply that is due per the court's order of October 9th, 2024, to be filed on the 20th of December, and then there will be hearings also per the October 9th court order scheduled on the 23rd of January 2025, and if necessary, Judge Hippler has also set aside the following day if there needs to be additional time, because there's going to be multiple motions that will be entertained on that day. This will now conclude this episode of the IndieZone here on YouTube. I want to thank you very much for joining us here today.